So if you're in your 30s or 40s and want to learn Japanese, there's usually one question most of us have. Am I too old? And you're probably thinking like, my memory isn't what it used to be, or I don't have the time or energy with all the things going on currently in my life. Look, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, a lot of that is actually true. But none of it is a reason why you can't learn Japanese. Because here's what usually no one tells you. You actually have 3 unfair advantages that younger learners literally can't access yet. And once you know how to use them, they completely change the entire game. Like, they make long-term success not just possible, but honestly more likely than if you were starting at 20. And I know this for a fact because I started learning Japanese at age 30. And that was 10 years ago. Never lived in Japan, worked around 50 to 60 hour weeks. And today I can have easily fluent conversations in Japanese, or watch full movies without any subtitles, or read a book in Japanese. So today I'll break down the 3 unfair advantages that actually made it possible for me to learn Japanese at my age, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use them for yourself. So if someone asks you, what's the number 1 reason you struggle with learning Japanese? What's going to be your answer? Most likely, time. I don't have the time. When you're in your 30s or 40s, your life is genuinely full in a way it just wasn't when you were 20. And here's the problem. Most Japanese learning advice out there, it assumes you're a 20-year-old with unlimited time. But that's gone now, and no productivity hack is going to magically give it back to you. But here's what actually nobody really talks about in the language learning space. You have something now that you definitely did not have at 20, and that is money. And money can actually buy back time for learning Japanese. And there are actually 2 ways how to think about this. The first one is getting more output from every minute you actually spend studying. See, here's the thing about free resources. If you have unlimited time, you can absolutely learn Japanese without spending $1, and the internet is absolutely incredible for that. But here's the catch. You spend a lot of time just trying figuring out what to actually study. For example, which kanji should I learn and how many should I learn using which method? And what about grammar? What about vocabulary? What makes sense to do here? Then you end up spending half your study time just researching how to study. And when you only have like 30 to 45 minutes a day, that's actually a disaster. So stop thinking of money as paying for access to content. Think of it as paying for sort of compressing your learning. You're buying clarity and structure so that every minute you sit down to study, you actually, learn Japanese and not Googling the best way to learn kanji on Reddit. So what would I actually spend my money on? Actually, it's 3 things. Number 1, a solid textbook like Genki 1 and 2. These are by far my favorite textbooks. And they're basically good for any beginner out there who just wants something that is very easy to access and to get into. And number 2 on that list is Thyself Remembering the Kanji, which uses a systematic method for learning kanji that works especially well for adult brains, I think. And the big one, number 3, paid one-on-one tutoring. And there are different ways to go about that. What I'm doing is I'm using a platform called italki, which is basically an app where you just go to find a online one-on-one teacher for Japanese that is usually a native speaker. Now you might think, why should I pay when I can actually also do a free language exchange? And here's why. In a language exchange, it's usually like a tandem situation where you learn the target language half of the time, but the other half of the time you speak your mother tongue, just so that your tandem partner is actually having a chance to learn their language. And that's all nice, but it's actually not very efficient. So with a paid tutor, the entire session is actually focused on you. For instance, they give you feedback, they correct your mistakes in real time or recommend materials for your specific level. And you can ask questions instead of, having to Google everything yourself if you don't understand something. Now, beyond getting more from your study time, you can also literally buy back hours in your week. And I mean this very practically. Like, for instance, you can get a house cleaner every 2 weeks. That buys you probably, 3 to 4 hours? Or you get like some sort of meal kit delivery service, like maybe just 2 to 3 times a week. And that saves you time on grocery shopping, planning for what you even want to cook and the actual cooking time. And you can spend all of that actually on learning Japanese. But, and this is a really important point, you have to actually protect that time for studying. It's like really easy to just spend that money and free up that time and then just use it for something else in the end. For instance, if you have a partner, really make sure that you talk to them about it, that you can ensure that this time is reserved for you learning now Japanese and not doing something else. Now, advantage number 2 is quite different and it doesn't cost you any money. That's the good news. But it might be still one of the most powerful ones on this list. Okay, so you've bought yourself back some time. But here's the thing, having time doesn't mean you'll actually use it. Like, be honest, how many times have you had a free evening and thought, I should study Japanese? and then just watch Netflix or scroll to your phone or whatever. And in reality, this isn't really about more willpower or you needing more discipline. You need a system that works when you're not feeling it. And if I could give any Japanese learner just one superpower, just one, it wouldn't be, having a photographic memory or, perfect, whatever, pitch accent pronunciation. It would be the ability to actually build a routine and stick to it. Because after 10 years of learning Japanese, I'm 100% convinced that consistency beats everything. Like talent, time, resources, none of it matters if you can't show up regularly. And here's the plot twist. As an adult, you already have this superpower. You just haven't thought to actually use it for learning Japanese. Adults in their 30s and beyond that actually have more stable daily patterns, better self-regulation, and you're better at delaying gratification. And you already have been building routines your entire life, right? Like you go to work at the same time, or you have your morning routines, you manage complex schedules with multiple commitments. You just haven't thought about deploying that skill for learning Japanese. And why does that matter so much? Because here's the thing about routines. Once they become automatic, they don't require motivation anymore. You don't wake up and debate whether to brush your teeth or not, right? And that's where you want your Japanese study to be. Something you do even on days when you're tired, like not feeling motivated or completely overwhelmed with other stuff going on. So how do you actually use that advantage? So I like to think of it as a pyramid that has 3 layers. And these 3 layers are basically your core daily routine. Probably like 30 minutes on a really tight day. The base is non-negotiable. Like you do it every single day, no matter what. And the middle layer you do as often as possible. And the top one you just add when you have the bandwidth. So the base is spaced repetition review. And if you haven't heard of this, it's basically a flashcard system where an app like Anki shows you cards of things you've already learned in the past and asks you to recall them. And the clever part here is the timing. Like it shows you each card right when you're about to forget it, which is exactly when your brain needs to see it again to actually make it stick. And here's why this is the foundation. As adults, our brains need more repetition to actually move something from short-term to long-term memory. That's just how it works. Like spaced repetition is specifically designed to solve that problem. And the beautiful thing is that this stays relevant from your very first day of learning Japanese right until more or less the very end when you reach an advanced level. It's the one habit that never stops being useful. So do this first every day, 10 minutes before your lunch break, first thing in the morning. I don't care when, but just do it every single day. And the middle layer is Japanese listening input. And this means basically putting Japanese into your ears regularly. And that could be a podcast, that could be a YouTube video, anything that is at your level or just slightly above your level. And here's why I think why that matters so much. Listening input is basically the backbone of language acquisition. It's how your brain starts recognizing patterns, building intuition for grammar, and starts to develop like a feel for how the language actually works. And the really cool part is that this is the easiest habit to actually stack to anything that you actually do in your life already. You do it while doing something else. So I like to listen to Japanese podcasts when I'm commuting to work. And that adds up to, roughly 6 hours a week, basically of free Japanese learning. And you can get really creative here with that. Like you can do the same during cleaning the house or cooking, walking the dogs, picking up the kids or whatever. And the last layer, the top layer, is then learning something new. That could be like, for instance, 5 new kanji before bed or 5 words in the morning or a new grammar point or whatever. So whatever it is, this is where you actually actively push your knowledge forward. And the reason that this is at the top and not the base is simply if you skip this for a few days, nothing really, terrible happens. If you skip your reviews, you start forgetting things you already invested time in. That's why the base is the base. So here's how I think about this. Motivation gets you started, but routines keep you actually going when you're not motivated. And for adults learning Japanese, that is going to happen a lot. That's just the reality of having a full life, and your routine is what will help you to get through those periods. Now, the last one, and I honestly think that this is the one that most people tend to overlook. Okay, here's where most people screw this up. And I mean seriously derail their entire Japanese learning journey. They find a popular method, like something a big YouTuber just swears by in his advertising, and they force themselves to exactly follow that single method, even if it makes them miserable. So one thing that a lot of people are talking about now is immersion, which means in a bit of a oversimplified way that you just try to surround yourself with Japanese all day and your brain will just absorb it. And for some people that actually works, but if you're working full time and you maybe have like whatever 3 to 5 hours to study per week, you're basically setting yourself up for failure. So here's the important message, and I really want you to hear this. If there's only just one thing you take away from this video, please let it be this one. Whether or not you enjoy your study method is the biggest predictor of whether you learn the language or not. It's not efficiency, it's not speed, it is enjoyment. And let me give you an example from my own experience. The first time I tried to learn Japanese, it was a classroom setting. There were grammar drills and the teacher would be, going around the room, asking everyone to repeat the same sentence out loud. You would have to read out your homework in front of the class. It was literally everything I hated in school, just now in my Japanese learning. And I literally quit that one after 3 to 4 months. And the second time around, I built my routine around things I actually enjoyed, like listening to Japanese podcasts on my commute or watching shows I genuinely wanted to watch. And yes, there was of course some structured study too, but only the parts that didn't make me actually dread sitting down. And that version of me is still going 10 years later. And the problem here is that people really obsess about, finding the optimal method. And they completely forget that they need to do this for literally years. And Japanese isn't just like some sort of weekend project. And with all the stuff that's going on in our lives as adults, it's really impossible to try to force yourself through something you actually hate for years and years. You will quit, it's as simple as that. And here's where your age becomes a genuine advantage. You actually know yourself. You've had decades of experience with your own brain. A 20-year-old is still, figuring out how they learn and what they enjoy and when they focus best and what drains them. But you already have that data. So to make it a bit more concrete, think about how you work best in your professional life. Are you a morning person or a night owl? Do you need structure and clear milestones, or do you prefer just, figuring things out yourself? You already know the answers to those questions, and those answers should shape exactly how you study Japanese. Like if you need structure and clear progress markers, just get a textbook with a clear path and, just work yourself through that. And don't try that, the world is your oyster approach, where you just explore whatever interests you and, just hope all the puzzle pieces just come together at some point. And if repetitive tasks drain you, then keep your Anki sessions very short and spend your energy on listening or conversation practice instead. If you're sharpest in the morning, do your kanji study with a coffee in the morning. Not at 9 p.m. after work when your brain is literally mush. And I know this sounds so obvious when I say it out loud, but you would be amazed how many people ignore everything they know about themselves the moment they start to learn a language. And here's the second layer of this. You also know your weaknesses, and that's even more valuable. So instead of just pretending they don't exist, build your study approach around them. If you're a perfectionist, just set, a good enough for now goal. When it comes to speaking, for instance, something like, I want to be able to have comfortable everyday conversations in Japanese and not, I want to sound native. If you tend to procrastinate, if you don't have any external, accountability partner, just get that tutor we talked about in the beginning. And that's not for just the language practice. Having an appointment with an actual person where you need to show up, I think is one of the biggest levers that you have to actually beat procrastination. So the point here is that your method does not need to be optimal. It needs to be sustainable. It kind of breaks my heart when I see adults that basically talk themselves out of learning Japanese just because they followed some advice online that was never designed for the type of life that they were leading in the first place. So here's the last thing I want to leave you with. And maybe that's the most important one. You're not trying to learn Japanese despite being in your 30s and 40s. You're actually learning it because you're in your 30s and 40s. So try to think of it as you're not at a disadvantage, you're just playing a completely different game. And I think, to be honest, it can be a genuinely fulfilling one, especially if you find ways to stay consistent. And if you want to go deeper and want to learn more about how to become more consistent with learning Japanese, check out this video up here next, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.